Most people in the gym aren't making progress because they don't understand one key thing: anatomy. When I first started working out, I just wanted to lift heavier and push harder, but I wasn't seeing the results I wanted. Until I began studying physiotherapy, it completely changed how I approach my training. I started to think about the rationale behind every exercise. What exercise is best for my body structures? The result is amazing. My muscle grow much faster, my injuries disappear, and I find training much more interesting. So building muscle isn't just about working hard, it's about understanding your body and training the right way. If you're new here, I'm Stephen, a nutritionist from HKU and a current physio student. Learning anatomy can be overwhelming. I spent years studying textbooks, attending lectures, watching tutorials, and even learning from cadavers, the real human bodies. But you don't have to go through all that. Today, I'm going to share the 3 most important anatomy tips to help you build muscle faster. First, the most useful anatomy knowledge I've learned is understanding the exact location of muscle attachments. For those of you who may not know, every skeletal muscle in your body attached to your bone. For example, if I want to bend my elbow, my brain will send a signal to the biceps, because the biceps cross the elbow joint. So when biceps contract, they pull the forearm toward the upper arm, create the elbow flexion. Actually, there are other muscles involved in the elbow flexion like the brachialis and brachioradialis, but we just focus on the concept of attachments. So you can imagine muscles have at least 2 attachment points because they attach to bones on both sides of a joint. We have the proximal attachment, which is closer to the center of your body, and a distal attachment, which is further away from the body. Knowing exactly where this attachment is really important because it is a key to a muscle growth. If your goal is to build muscle, your mission with every exercise is to move the muscle through its full range of motion, like bend your elbow from here to here, or at least put the muscle in the lengthened position under tension, like here. Because study shows that these 2 approaches leads to more muscle growth than training in the shortened position like this. You can see many people do this in the gym. So if you don't know where your muscle attaches, you don't know where to start and where to stop, and that means you are leaving gains on the table. Let me give you a quick example. Have you seen people doing the dumbbell chest squeeze press? A lot of people think it's a great exercise for building the chest, but when you really break it down, it's not. Here's why. The proximal attachments of your pectoralis major, aka chest, is at the sternum and clavicle, and the distal attachment is at the humerus. The main job of chest muscle is to move your upper arm toward the midline of your body, and that's the horizontal adduction. But in the chest squeeze press, most of the movement comes from the elbow extension and shoulder flexion, not horizontal adduction. That means you are not targeting the chest, although you can feel the chest is burning or pumping. But pump doesn't always mean growth, and that's not the only issue. There's another problem: the moment arm. Think of the moment arm as the measure of how effectively a force acts on a joint. In the chest squeeze press, the largest moment arm is at the triceps and deltoids, not the chest. So it reduces tension on the pec muscles, but I won't go too deep into moment arms here, otherwise we will be here for 20 more minutes, but you get the idea. So what's the better option than the dumbbell chest squeeze press? 2 of my favorites are machine chest fly and bench press. They allowed me to fully stretch my chest at the bottom, which is exactly what I want. Now you understand the importance of muscle attachments, and it brings us to the second tip: knowing the difference between 1 joint and 2 joint muscles. 1 joint muscle means the muscle only cross 1 joint, 2 joint muscle means the muscle cross 2 joints. 1 joint muscles like your deltoid, soleus, brachialis only cross 1 joint, so training them is easy. Just focus on keeping your body stable and aim to move that 1 joint. But when it comes to 2 joint muscles like the hamstring, biceps, rectifemoris, it's a bit trickier. You have to position the joint well, otherwise the muscle will lose tension and reduce muscle gains. Here's the principle for maximizing 2 joint muscle tension: pre-stretch the stabilizing joint and move the working joint. Moving the working joint is easy to understand. Let's say leg curl, I need to move my knee joint, but how do you pre-stretch the stabilizing joint? You can think of this way: the stabilizing joint should do the opposite of the muscle functions at that joint. Let's take the hamstring as an example. The hamstrings work at the both knee and hip joints, so hamstring help us to extend the hip, like standing up from a squat, or flex your knee, like when you bend your leg. When doing a leg curls, the working joint is the knee, so the stabilizing joint is the hip. Do you remember the principle? Pre-stretch the stabilizing joint and move the working joint. In leg curl, stabilizing joint is the hip. So remember, the stabilizing joint should do the opposite of the muscle function at that joint. A hip joint, hamstring is for hip extension. That means you need to do the opposite of hip extension at the hip joint. which is hip flexion. So when you seated leg curl, your hamstring are flexed. It puts the hamstring in the pre-stretch position before you start bending your knees. This pre-stretch leads to better muscle growth because it creates more mechanical tension in the muscles. And that's why research shows that seated leg curl are better than lying leg curls for hamstring growth. Here's a quick question to see if you really understand the concept. Let's say you want to train your rectus femoris. It is one of the quadricep muscles that cross both the hip and knee joints. The job of rectus femoris is flex the hip and extend the knee. So the question is, if you want to train your rectus femoris, should you lean forward or backward during leg extensions? Take a second to think about it. The correct answer is to lean backward. Why? Because rectus femoris flex the hip and extend the knee. So to pre-stretch the rectus femoris, you need to do the opposite function of the stabilizing joint. So hip extension is the opposite of the rectus function. So next time you train the two joint muscles like the gastrocnemius, sartorius, biceps, ask yourself what is the stabilizing joint and what's the opposite function. Then train it in the pre-stretch position and you will see the difference in how your muscle respond. Now you know how to get the most out of two joint muscles, and let's get something more specific. Let's talk about anatomy uniqueness. Yes, your body's anatomy isn't the same as the person next to you. That's why you should never copy someone else's form and technique. And it was the mistakes I made before. When I was new to the gym, I always copied the biggest dude's workout. I followed their routine. I remember watching them doing barbell squats. They can squat so deep, like ass to grass. So I thought, if I want to grow my leg, I have to work like them. But when I tried deep squats, it just didn't feel good. My lower back would round and sometimes my back have some pain, but I really want to squat like them, like ass to grass, so I kept doing the squat for years until I learned this key concept. Our bodies are unique. Our bones, joints, and muscles are not built exactly the same as others. You can look at these examples. The hip socket shape, size is different, the direction of femur is different, the shape of scapula is different, the orientation of tibia is different. You can find more examples in this website. I will put the link in the description. So the key idea is expecting to move exactly like someone else doesn't make sense. Let's take squat as an example. For some lifters, a deep squat is easy because they have shorter femurs, but if you have a long femurs, going deep might feel uncomfortable. Your knee may be caved in, your lower back may be rounded, and it's not just about femur length that affects your squat depth. Your hip socket depth, shape, orientations, and even the shape of your femurs can affect how deep your squat. Those are the structures you can't change, and that's okay. You can still improve squat depth by stretching, using wider stance, and wearing the squat shoes. But you can't squat like a weightlifter ass to grass. It's not your fault, it's your anatomy, and it's perfectly fine. You should never try to force your body to move exactly like someone else because it can lead to inefficient mechanics or even worse, injury. There's no the best exercise for everyone, but there's a best exercise for you. Your job is to experiment with different form and technique like foot positions, grip width, or find what feels most natural and effective for your body. For squat, this could mean trying a wider stance, elevate your heels, or even switch to head squat instead of barbell squat. It's a process of constant improvement. Even after 8 years of training, I still find areas to tweak and improve. And that's what training is all about: progressing, learning, and fixing mistakes along the way. I made so many mistakes during my lifting journey. I wish someone else could teach me those concepts. So to save your time and effort on your fitness journey, I made a video covering the top 3 beginner mistakes I made in the gym. Check it out and I will see you there.